Okay, we'll call to order the meeting of the December 2023 meeting of the Sycamore Township Zoning Commission. My name is Roger Friedman, the chairman. Mr. Meese, if you would take the roll call.
Happy to. Ms. Flanagan? Here. Mr. Barrett? Present. Mr. Friedman?
Present.
Mr. Roos?
Here.
Mr. Swanson? Present.
Okay. Very good. Mr. Swanson is here as our alternate.
Yes. We get to listen today.
We'll have the minutes from the October 2023 meeting. Any changes or anyone care to make a motion to approve them?
So moved.
Mr. Meese moved.
I'll second.
Second. Any other comments or corrections? All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Minutes are approved. Okay. No old business. New business. We were supposed to have a couple of cases, 3 cases today, but we're down to 1. Case number 2023-15 MA. LASR. The applicant is Michael Rosenbaum for property at 11500 North Lake Drive. It's a major adjustment to an LASR. Jeff, you want to bring us up to date?
Yes, thank you. So it's case 2023-15 MA. It's dealing with a laser local area alternative sign regulation. In other words, a sign plan for the site. It will potentially adjust the parent case, which is 2005-17 LASR. This case was I reviewed the history of it. It was just reviewed by the zoning commission. The board of trustees did not take action on it. So the decision tonight, if the board decides to amend the case, that's kind of where it will stop. It's viewed no different than PUD 1. It's not in the Kenwood area. So whatever decision you make will kind of be binding. It won't go before the trustees. Similarly to the 2005 case, there was no evidence that it went before the trustees. The subject property is 11500 North Lake Drive. The parcel is 060000210080. The applicant is SGRT North Lake LLC, represented by Michael Rosenbaum, as mentioned, and the current zoning is F industrial. It's a unique site. It's 10.022 acres. The frontage along I-71, which is a relevant point, is 1,229 linear feet. And the traffic count along I-71, which accounts for the 275 on-ramp and the 275 off-ramp on the 275, accounts for 144,872 cars on a given day. Just for some background, the subject property is home to a circa 1982 office building with 180,468 square feet of finished space. In the application, the applicant, Michael Rosenbaum of SGRT North Lake, notes many of the modernization efforts that they've undertaken to keep the subject property competitive, and I'll let him address that later on, just to kind of give the board a context of the efforts they're making. I do give the applicant credit. They're very forthcoming with the building's position. As I mentioned later on in the report, it is a laser case, but really this is an economic development case. Per the application materials, the applicant reports that the building's occupancy rate has climbed to approximately 66% in 2023. To improve that rate in FY24, the applicant is attempting to secure 2 substantial office tenants, one of which is Marshall McLennan Agency, who would rent substantial space in the building, approximately 12,000 to 15,000 square feet, and another tenant. To aid in their negotiations with the potential tenants, more flexibility is sought for the building's wall signage. Just to kind of go through the proposal here, I think this has kind of been a discussion point with Mr. Rosenbaum and his folks for a year. We were discussing it with the prospects of Marshall McLennan coming on. I think they've kind of called back. They're waiting to see whatever they're looking to see. But I think the thought was, let's go through this case. Let's kind of come up with a game plan, make your proposal, and then that can kind of give you some arrows in the quiver as you guys negotiate, potential future leases, to give the negotiation process some certainty. So what Mr. Rosenbaum and his company presents is essentially on the 71 elevation of the building, proposing 4 wall signs. Currently, the existing wall signs are, it's sign 1, which is this Arizona College of Nursing sign, and then sign 3, which is this VTOS sign. So at their current concentration of signage in review of the 2005 case, they have all these signage that was allowed for the building up. In the past, there has been examples where there's holes in the building where signs have been, for example, where this Marshall McLennan agency but so there has been signs in other places, but right now they're kind of maxed out with these 2 signs 1 and 3, Arizona College and College of Nursing. What they're looking to do is propose 2 additional wall sign locations. This location 2, which is Marshall McLennan agency. Could it be another 10 in the future? Perhaps. But what they're asking for is a 25x4 sign location. And then along the, it's kind of the northeastern elevation, sign location 4, where this future tenant space would be same size, 48 by 25. Just to note, this long side faces pretty much due south. So kind of go through the, there's what they propose is new wall sign locations 2 and 4, as I discussed. Wall sign location 2 would be either for a tenant of over 15,000 square feet or a current tenant renewal that they're expanding their footprint and must be over 15,000 square feet. Sign location 4, which would be the kind of the southeast or east location, the future tenant space, it would be same thing, but their tenant space would be 12,000 square feet or at a current tenant renewal that is expanding to be over 12,000 square feet. And then you would have existing wall sign locations 1, which is the Arizona College, and then location 3, which is the VTOS, which would have no square footage minimum. And I'll kind of get into a little bit later why that's probably a good idea. For wall signs 2 and 4, there would just be some minimum stipulations that I think hopefully the landlord would also put in their lease too to help things out. But the term of the lease must be a minimum of 5 years. And then if a tenant downsizes to under 10,000 square feet, their sign must be removed. And this is something that really probably the landlord has an incentive to probably police on their end, because if they have a tenant that had the sign up that have downsized like 2,000 square feet, they have limited sign space, so they kind of want a mechanism to take down that sign. And so that's one, it's kind of an attempt to get there, but we didn't want to craft that condition to be too harsh, because it's like, how do we enforce it? And we also don't want to create unintended consequences for the property owner. And then finally, for wall signs 1, 2, 3, and 4, these sign locations shall never be digital and must adhere to all applicable sign rules of the zoning resolution. For example, no flashing. There shall be no validity period unless amended by a future case. So what that means is the wall sign plan would be this if approved, unless we have a future case that amends it. So let's say it did take them, in this office market 2 years to land 2 substantial tenants, under this plan, it would be fine because there would be no validity period. And then the site arrangement of the 4 wall signs and other wall sign stipulations in this noted in this case shall only be amended in future major adjustment cases. So that is that element there. So we're discussing this. There's 2 other elements to think through. One is the monument signs. In the 2005 case, there was item 3, which talked about a freestanding monument sign on I-71. This was never built. And in theory, the validity period ran on it about 17 years ago. And so long story short, the staff is recommending that this proposed monument sign that was never built along I-71 basically be stricken from this case. But in the future, if the landlord comes to the township saying, hey, economic development, we have a tenant that really needs this, really wants it, we can address that at that point, and that might be reasonable. Another reason to strip the never built I-71 monument sign was in 2020, the township issued a zoning certificate for the monument sign that you see here, 1 North Lake Place, that's 96 by 60, 76 inches tall. Generally, this monument sign is to code, except for requires a masonry base, but I guess, water under the bridge, staff, approved it like that at that time. But that was another reason why the kind of thought was perhaps, with no plan for an I-71 monument sign and no tenant requesting it, as they already have an existing sign. The goal was to make that sign, you'll see below in the recommendation, a bullet point of the case, just so we acknowledge it. And then if they want one in the future, we can address that at that time. Does that make sense? Very good. Then we kind of just get to the more granular points of the 2005-17 case. Below, you'll see I recommend that we basically, I said repeal conditions 1, 2, and 3. Condition 1 that talked about building signage, which is moot now that we're going through this case. Condition 2 talked about building sign. It's moot because we're going through this case. Condition 3, as I just mentioned, was the monument sign that was never built. And currently there's no plan to build it. 4 and 5, we would recommend keeping. No other freestanding signs except for previously approved directional signs are permitted on the property. In theory, that even could be amended to allow for the 2020 built monument sign, but you'll see below that it's covered generally with a new condition. And then 5, the temporary for lease sign on the building is to be removed. And the existing ground-based for lease sign is to comply with the section 13 of the Sycamore Township zoning resolution. So the staff would recommend keeping that. Just as for some analysis, while this is a laser case, the theme of the case is really economic development. So to ensure that the property manager has the necessary and reasonable tools at their disposal to competitively position the building in the 2024 and beyond office market. It is a natural time to update the LASR, given the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic. Really its effect on the office leasing and interest rate market. Interest rates, I think, and Michael can touch base on this more, but it's kind of, from what we've seen, it's kind of slowed the growth of the office market or development. Office vendors are now focused on amenities and making it the best they can. And also this laser has not been updated since 2005. In short, although the leasing of the building is reported to be on an upward trend, adding more tenants will improve the vitality of the building. I think it could be argued in objective fact, the more viable tenants a commercial office building has, that's the lifeblood of an office building's health. Next point, why did the township seek to include square footage minimums for the locations of new wall sign 2 and 4? The conditions set forth for new wall signs, conditions 2 and 4, provide incentive to attract new substantial tenants. The same was considered for the locations of existing wall signs 1 and 3, but the applicant noted that flexibility is necessary. And let's say a unique tenant arose where it would be a good idea to have their name on the building. Tesla, Apple, they wanted a regional office, but they didn't want all the space. I think Michael successfully argued to me, and I agree 100%, that it's good practice to give him flexibility. Maybe they do want to have a kind of a big name tenant, maybe with lesser space. In discussion of the wall signage, this property is tailor-made for a laser, given its size and unique frontage. Again, 140,000 plus cars pass the building on a given day. From an aesthetic point of view, the proposal of an additional 2 building wall signs does not, so for 4 total, does not unduly saturate the building from a wall signage perspective. Given the scale and massing of the building, there's a lot of right angles on the building. In subject property, adding 2, I mentioned that it's reasonable and tasteful. I also consider the residential that lives across the 71, about 500 plus feet away. And generally the conclusion I came to that the light generated from the monument signs is insufficient to violate the township's foot candle standards. And oh, by the way, we have a non-flashing rule proposed too. I think I addressed the I-71 monument sign on why we would strike it from this case, but in the future, if they wanted to bring it, if the board wanted to weigh in on that, I mentioned, this might be an appropriate time to mention that in the minutes, but if the board doesn't want to weigh on that until a proposal came in, that would be acceptable too. With that, staff recommends the laser that governs the subject property be modified as follows. Condition 1, 2, and 3 of case 2005-17 LASR are repealed. Conditions 4 and 5 of case 2005-17 LASR are maintained in full force and effect. Generally, the 2023 wall sign site arrangement will be as follows, corresponding to the official wall sign plan of this case. New wall sign location 2 and 4, which would be 25 by 4 max. Sign location 2 would be either a new tenant of over 15,000 square feet or a current tenant renewal and is expanding their footprint. It must be over 15,000 square feet. Wall sign location 4 would be the same setup, but a 12,000 square foot floor. Existing wall signs location 1 and 3, 1 being 25 feet by 4 feet max. No tenant, there would be no tenant square footage minimums. And then location 3, which would be 14 feet 4 inches by 42 inches max. There would again to be no tenant square footage minimums. For wall signs 1, 2, 3, and 4, these sign locations shall never be digital and must adhere to all applicable sign rules of the zoning resolution. For example, no flashing. There shall be no validity period for the wall sign plan unless amended by a future case. So if it took the landlord a few years to land larger tenants, this plan wouldn't expire. The site arrangement of the 4 wall signs and other wall sign stipulations in this case shall only be amended via future major adjustment case. And finally, the monument sign noted in this case that was approved and installed in 2020 shall remain. If it is replaced in the future, it shall comply with the zoning resolution. With that, that's all I have. This was just the ODOT rendering showing the 140,000 plus cars, the math, and then just a larger version of the sign plan that was discussed. So with that, are there any questions?
Any questions?
I do. What was the reason behind location sign number 3 for the decrease maximum square footage? I'm just wondering why we're not talking about uniform signs given the locations of all of these signs.
That's a good question. I think it's just what they had, and so
No one asked for more.
they did not ask for more. But to the argument of something symmetrical, if the board decided to up that sign location 3 space to allow for 25 by 4 max, and so VTOS could maintain, but if VTOS were to come down for a new tenant, I wouldn't have a huge issue with that. If you did bring that VTOS sign down more, there's less space in between, so maybe they start to run into each other. I could see both, but if the applicant wanted to match that VTOS sign 3 to be at that same location, I wouldn't have any objection. It would really be up to the board.
And was there a reason you didn't include the language about having a lease more than 5 years? You want to leave that for the landlord? Is that the thought process? That was not included in the conditions?
That was.
It's not included in the conditions. It was included in the proposal. I don't see it mentioned.
Oh, that might have been an oversight.
And it also does not mention a penalty, not a penalty, but the removal of the sign if they go below 10,000.
Right. That was a clear oversight, so I apologize for that. So we would want to put the condition for wall signs. The term of the lease must be a minimum of 5 years if the tenant downsizes under 10,000. Part of this is an experiment too. Maybe it doesn't work, and if it doesn't, I know Mr. Rosenbaum will be in touch, and then we can look at it. But the goal of it all is to provide some incentive and some structure there.
I've been just looking at this. I know I'm maybe jumping ahead, but I was thinking there's 2 conditional bullets here under that discussion of the wall signs. If the first 2 could be combined, I'm just asking for your thoughts. Would it still be in keeping with your recommendation, something to the effect of new wall sign locations 2 and 4 with the 25 by 4 feet maximum apply to either a new tenant or a current tenant renewal with a lease of equal to or greater than 5 years and with footprints of at least, and my thought was just make it at least 12,000. Are we, I mean, is there a reason that they have to be separately discussed for one question anyway?
The thought was, I think on location 2 was, it's probably a more prominent sign location, and it was proposed through our discussions is 15,000. And so the reason to break them up were one's 15,000, one's 12. And
I'm
so
just kind of wondering if our goal is to make it attractive to tenants. And if we're already talking about going as low as 10,000 before they have to take it out, why don't we quit quibbling and pick a number and stick with it? That was just my thought. But if we could come in that, we're still within the framework of your recommendations to us.
yeah, I think on the one point of the minimum lease term in terms of years, and then if the tenant downsizes, I think we can mix that into the on the 15,000 and 12. There was some kind of pre-agreement. I think the goal, the underlying goal, I think, for the township perspective is to get the nicest, biggest tenants into the building, because then it's, it's not only going to help the building's vitality, but it's going to help the businesses around. And so with the 15,000 and 12,000 number, that is what was proposed by the applicant. So I was comfortable with it. Now, if the applicant came up with something different, we can have a discussion, but to your point, I don't disagree with you. It's just, whatever way you want to look at it.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Jeff?
I have one. Is there a definition of the digital sign?
A digital sign.
Yes, the one that's not allowed. Is there a way that defines that? Or does it
A
mean
digital
letters?
sign,
Does
a
it
digital
mean
sign would be like a video board that you see at,
moving?
Great American or,
Messaging.
it's a digital video board. A digital sign is not a backlit sign. It's a TV screen that you're putting in. And I put that in there because by code, in theory, there's nothing that currently disallows wall signs that are digital. In 2024, it's a goal to look at that, but you can read the code and there's really not there's a prohibition on moving digital signs, but there's not a prohibition on digital signs that aren't moving. And there's also not a explicit prohibition on wall signs that are digital that are not moving. And so that was this whole thing to add the digital component is new because perhaps there is I don't like the term loophole, but there's some opening in the code that can be a good attorney could exploit it. And so we just want to, for this in future cases, but I think the solution could be in 2024 that we look closely into some of the sign code.
Wonder what a mediocre.
Any land use attorney.
Okay, no other questions for Jeff. Anyone here for the applicant who wishes to speak? If you would step up to the podium, give it your name and affiliation.
I'm Michael Rosenbaum. I'm the asset manager for the building. Jeff, you've done an amazing job. I feel like I don't have much left to say. Hit almost every single point. And I did work with Jeff on creating terms and conditions proactively to provide some incentive for the township as well as for us to capture some good tenants in the future. We have a great leasing broker, Chris Vollmer, and he's been constantly showing the spaces. And one of the first things they always ask is, oh, can we put up a sign on the wall facing the traffic? Because that's a huge plus for us and maybe a necessity if we're choosing your building. So we're trying to be proactive here because we know that the vast majority of all our prospects are asking for this condition to be part of it. And currently we only have 2 signs available and they're both taken. So this would be a huge element for us to help with our productivity in leasing the future occupants of the building. And just the same as Jeff said, we don't want to put up a sign for just someone to come in 5,000 square feet or even 8,000 square feet. We definitely want to attract larger tenants. We have some big vacancies, and we're willing to spend the money. We've put in a lot of money into the building the last few years since the current ownership bought it. They put in millions of dollars in renovating the lobby, the common areas, the parking areas, the dumpster corral we just did. I mean, whatever it takes, we've been putting in the money proactively, and we will continue to do that. We have the basis to do that, to capture these tenants, and we just want to make it as easy as possible for us to obtain them. And this will go a long way.
Any questions for Mr. Rosenbaum?
You've seen some restrictions here on size of tenants. Like what would your ideal floor be for these size, for these assignments?
I mean, ideally, the floor plates, I think, are over 40,000 square feet each. They're separated onto 4 different floors, and they stagger depending on, and the layout is a very modern layout for the building structure. So there's different cutouts and a lot of right angles. But ideally, I mean, we're looking for 20,000 square foot tenant would be amazing right now. We just got Arizona College, which took around that amount of space. We think that would be ideal for us, but realistically speaking, somewhere over 10,000 would be somewhere where we're landing right now, 10 to 15,000, which would give us these requirements would land us right in that prospect. So if someone coming in and saying, hey, we want 10,000, we'll say, hey, for a couple more thousand, we could put your sign on the wall. Okay, similar. Hey, you want to get the better signage, you got to go up to 15,000. So that seems to be where we're finding the sweet spot right now. A lot of them are coming around that 10 to 15,000 range.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Anyone else here care to make any comments, ask any questions? Seeing nothing. Anyone care to make a motion with regard to this application? She's got all the intentions.
I move we consider case number 2023-15MA with the conditions proposed by staff with the addition of, well, I think I'll just leave it at that right now, and then we can discuss it. With the
Okay,
conditions as proposed,
I'll second.
recommendations as proposed.
second, any additional comments? Mr. Beast?
Sure. So you were exploring whether we should just kind of settle on one criteria for all the signs, make all the signs the same size.
It seems like they visually look that way, and I don't see any real reason to distinguish between them.
So all of them now are proposed at 100 square feet. The last one, the fourth one was not used.
Right.
I would be fine if they were all just 100 square feet.
25 by 4.
I'm assuming the 4-foot height makes it fit within the space that's available at the top of the building. And then were you exploring a common minimum amount of square footage for all
Well,
the signs?
I wondered about that, but hearing from staff that they wanted at least 2 of the signs to be a little bit more flexible for tenants, I have no problem with that. The other 2, it seemed to me, we might as well make more uniform, since we're talking about numbers all the way from 10,000 to 15. If 12 is what we want to encourage, then we ought to just say equal to or at least 12,000 square feet for signs 2 and 4. Turn that into one bulleted item. And also include in that, as long as we're talking about that, here's what I have kind of sketched out. New wall sign locations 2 and 4, 25 feet by 4 feet maximum, apply to either a new tenant or a current tenant renewal with a lease of at least equal to or greater than 5 years and with a footprint of at least 12,000 square feet per tenant, I guess, to be clear. And then I had not really felt it necessary to include a take the sign down provision. I don't know if you do think we need that or not.
Are you talking about the existing monument sign that was.
No, I'm talking about when they said if it dropped to 10,000 square feet.
The take the sign down provision is not meant for staff to be the sign police. It's meant for staff to, just to have it in that case. And then if there's an issue with, perhaps Mr. Rosenbaum were to move on, it's a new land manager. They're having trouble with their tenant for whatever reason, getting that sign down when they want to put up a new sign of a nice new tenant that's going to rent X number of square feet. It's just a piece of code or essentially code, a piece of language that's there to essentially kind of be kind of like a trump to say, no, here's what the overall says. And that's going to give the future land or property manager leverage to go back to that tenant that won't take the sign down. That's the purpose of it. The purpose of it is not for staff to.
I don't have any problem with it indicating it should come down, but to me, if we say it's got to be at 12,000 feet, and then we tell you don't have to take it down until you get to 10, that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
It's like telling my kids, you can't do this, but just doesn't work for me.
Was there any discussion on this, the location of the signage? Is it all gonna be on the front of the building? Or is they're gonna be putting on the
So,
sides or back?
Let me pull it up here.
I didn't see.
So sign locations 1 and 2.
Okay.
1 would go here. There's no square footage minimum. It's existing. 2 would go right here. As proposed, it's a 15,000 square foot minimum. Sign 3 here is existing. And it sounds like the board is fine with going to a 25 by 4 on that, which is fine. That's sign 3, and then sign 4, which would be for a new tenant of up to 12,000 square feet floor. Would go here at the same size, 25 feet by 4 feet.
You don't have that in the text anywhere referring to a plan. Maybe, is that what you're referring to?
This is
So in your comments on your suggested recommendation, you're not referring to those locations. And
on the staff report. I numbered I didn't do it here because this is the raw version, but I numbered the sign locations, and the official plan of the case would essentially be this, specifying the location.
so if we make on the motion should include that the signs 1, 2, 3, 4 are positioned per this
Yeah.
elevation, which we don't have in the motion at the moment.
Corresponding to the wall sign plan of this case, what I meant to, and to your guys' great point, we're making that more specific to the numbered one. A reasonable person could say, well, which one do you mean, the one that has the numbers on it, or the one that's original blank that came in?
Whether it's, the east side or the west side, the building. If you, I don't know which way that's facing exactly.
So we can clean it up by saying basically from the staff report, the numbered plan, and then if we want to add directions into it, we can. So the long side where sign locations 1 and 2 are, we'll call that the south elevation. And then the east elevation, which, VTOS is right here. Then you have that other sign 4 location. That's the east elevation where you have the existing VTOS sign that would have no proposed limit. And then the sign location 4 would be at 12,000.
So there wouldn't be any signage on the west side at all.
At current, no, we haven't discussed and then I want to be careful with the building is rather large with a lot of right angles. At 4 signs, is the building saturated? I think that's a subjective thing. At 5 signs, but who knows what the future holds? But if a 5th sign were ever to come, perhaps that's a western elevation one, but we're not there yet. I think, of course, that would be probably tenant related if that came up ever, but that's not. So really, it's just the southern elevation on this frontage, and then the eastern elevation here. Perhaps I made an assumption that it was very clear on what those, but and maybe we can update it by putting the numbers in like I did, and then putting in a note east elevation, south elevation, and then even put a little corresponding map in the corner so that it erases any doubt in the future if any doubt ever arose. Because what I said didn't make any sense.
I think you just need to tie it to some kind of a diagram.
Yeah.
Okay. See any other,
So just to be clear, we're proposing that, I'm just going on the bullet points, in bullet point 3, there's a new wall sign, it can be 25 by 4, needs to have a tenant of 15,000 square feet, or you're recommending that we go with 12,000 for both of them.
I was thinking there might as well be uniform,
Well,
but
for both
our
of
goal is
them,
to attract.
And it has to have a lease of 5 years. A new tenant or a renewal of at least 5 years, but we're not gonna reduce it down to 10,000 square feet. But
That was
that's
my
the
thought.
lease, okay? And then you're rolling that first bullet point and the second bullet point just together as one
Yes.
condition, right? That covers signs 2 and 4,
Right,
okay?
and I presume you could add a language there about the sign would be subject to removal if it falls below that.
Below the threshold.
I think that covers it, yeah.
And then signs, the third and fourth bullet point, we're gonna make it, the fourth bullet point, location 3 is also gonna be 25 feet by 4 feet. And both of those signs have no tenant minimum square foot.
That's what I think would be, makes sense to me. But what I did not get is how you wanted to phrase currently the location of the signs. Are we just referencing that to a?
So what we'll do for the minutes to erase all doubt is we will superimpose the actual diagram into the minutes so that there is absolutely that, because the minutes will essentially be the deciding document of the case. So if someone goes back and say, okay, what was that approval? It's going to be in those minutes. We will superimpose that plan in there so it erases. So they'll have the stipulations and then, or the bullets, and then here's the diagram, and there will be no doubt.
Yeah, I think you already said corresponding to the wall sign. plan.
Okay, so we don't need to change the language
Reference
then.
that drawing,
Yeah.
diagram.
One comment, I guess, first off, I think on these bullets, if we can start using
Number.
numbers and letters or
I-
whatever, with our conversations will be a little clearer.
I've done that a few times, and then as Ann was talking about it, I was like, I need to put those as numbers.
Yeah.
Apologize.
So, the way I'm reading this right now, we have the dark bullet points are number 1, 2, and 3. And then you have an open bullet, you're combining the two of those, which would be 3A in my mind.
Okay,
Mhm.
And then the third of the current open bullets would be B, and the fourth would be C. But combining,
theoretically, they could be combined as well, I suppose, those two.
yeah. And what I was, the comment I wanted to get to, I guess, B and C, talking about the current tenants. I think we should put something in the language that applies the same terms to a future tenant for signs 3 and 4, because they're right now, you indicate no square footage minimums.
Not
Well,
3 and
that's-
4, but 1 and.
Well, sorry,
and 3.
3A, 3,
Oh, I
maybe
gotcha.
it's sign location 1 and 3, I guess is to clarify.
Gotcha.
I think it's, you could or do whatever you'd like, but it does say existing wall sign location 1 or 2, so it's not mentioning like VTOS or
Yeah.
Arizona College.
But you're saying no tenant square footage minimums. And I'm saying that we should have that same.
Meaning-
12,000 square foot minimum. If that tenant leaves, if one of those college or nursing leaves and that gets released, there should be a minimum on the next.
No, staff agrees with the applicant that sign locations 1 and 3 should not have minimums, because in the event that they have a tenant that
A high profile
would be
tenant.
high profile tenant that would be like Apple or Tesla, or maybe they only want, it's a regional office, they only want to rent 3,000 or 4,000 square feet, yet I think everyone agree that it's good to give them some flexibility there.
I don't know, if we're putting
Yeah.
restrictions on new signs, well, we can apply to go. I kind of get what you're saying, but
It's because the baseline are the original signs, if you know, it's a late LASR, if they want more, it's an incentive.
These are extra signs, essentially, that's how we're justifying the treat being different.
but do we really want somebody hanging up a wall sign who's renting 2,000 square feet?
If it's a high profile tenant, the argument made sense to me. Of course, if you guys disagree, I mean, that's you guys.
who decides whether it's a high profile tenant or not.
It would be the landlord by virtue of the flexibility they have.
Okay.
And the uniqueness of the property to some extent, it's not like it's right up on a residential neighborhood, it's facing the highway in a good portion.
And in fact, along I-71, I looked, I-71, I-75, I couldn't find another area in Cincinnati where there was a higher traffic count in terms of interstate highway. This is about the busy, and it makes sense because it's at the junction point of 275. It's a unique location.
Well,
So,
how about the existing area, the right to the monument sign? Do we want to go with that?
the one that has never been attempted, I like the idea of the sign,
Taking a, right, I think we need to add that to your motion.
the monument.
By virtue of the repealing of condition 3 would remove it.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, so we're covered otherwise on the 2 monuments.
So on 3, there would be 3, you would also merge the B and C, so it'd be basically 3A and 3B, or because the
There's
location
governance
3 will now be
signs.
25 by 4.
Okay, I think I got it. So, more discussion?
No?
Okay, then I need to amend the motion.
Do your best.
Thank you. But maybe that mediocre attorney. This will be case number 2023-15 MA. I'm proposing an amended consideration here. Looking at the recommendations of staff, for John's sake, I'm going to try to follow that language as much as I can. So the first bullet would be bullet 1, conditions 1, 2, and 3 of case 2005-17 LASR are repealed. Condition 2, or bullet 2, conditions 4 and 5 of case 2005-17 LASR maintained in full force in effect. The amended motion here comes in at bullet 3. The 2023 wall sign arrangement corresponding to the wall sign plan of this case will be referenced by diagram in the minutes, I believe. So at this point, going from the staff report, we are now combining the next 2 bulleted items into 3A, which would be new wall sign locations 2 and 4 will have a maximum square footage of 25 feet by 4 feet. And they apply to either a new tenant or a current tenant renewal with a lease of at least 5 years and with footprints of at least 12,000 square feet. In the event their square footage falls below that, the wall signs 2 and 4 will be subject to removal. Then the next 2 bulleted items would be combined in the 3B. Existing wall sign locations 1 and 3 will have a maximum square footage of 25 feet by 4 feet each. And there are no tenant square footage minimums on these applying to these 2 wall signs. Final bullets are for wall signs 1, 2, 3, and 4. These sign locations shall never be digital unless adhere to all applicable sign rules of the zoning resolution. In other words, no sign flashing. There shall be no validity period for the wall sign plan unless amended by a future case. The size, site arrangement of the 4 wall signs and other wall stipulations noted in this case shall only be amended via a future major adjustment case. The monument sign noted in this case that was previously approved and installed in 2020 shall remain. If it is replaced in the future, it shall comply with the zoning resolution. And for example, that means implementing a masonry base. There is no other monument sign being approved at this time.
Just one point on the condition 4, and it was a point that Mr. Swanson made. I think we all know what digital means, but just in parentheses, we would just add after digital, no EMC, which is electronic. I think it's a sign industry term, electronic message center. And then that erases any doubt of what digital is.
I would include that in item 4 then. No EMC
After the word digital.
after the word digital.
Gotcha. Anyone care to second?
Resecond.
Seconded. Thank you, Ms. White. Okay, Space, you want to take a roll on that?
Sure. Ms. Flanagan.
Right.
Mr. Barrett.
Aye.
Mr. Friedman.
Aye.
Mr. Roos.
Aye.
I'll vote aye as well.
Okay.
Then we can have the other 2 cases.
All right, that concludes this case for this evening. And it will not go in front of the trustees.
It will not.
Thank you, sir. Moving on. The agenda. Do the trustees have anything they want to tell us?
We would just need to table the two cases.
Right.
For the record.
And is my understanding the case number 2023-16 MA, which is LASR, and case number 2023-17 MA have both, the applicants have requested that they be tabled until a future meeting.
That's right. For case 2023-16 MA. And I would also note that any tabling of a case shouldn't be construed as a negative. It's positive. They're just working with them. 2023-16 MA relates to the collection building. The last major update to that building in terms of a comprehensive sign plan was in 2016. Of recent, there's been a few cases that have come up where there's some amendments to update the plan by saying, hey, what about a sign there? And kind of in review of the case, and that was done by an applicant, kind of not in the context of the property manager. And so in talking to the property manager, the thought was, hey, the last big update for this case was 2016, years before COVID, things have changed. There's also places perhaps where sign locations aren't being used. If we're going to go through another case, let's take our time and comprehensively look at the whole building to make sure we're on the right track. This could be tabled into February. It wouldn't surprise me, but for now, just the proposal is the January 8th, 2024 meeting.
We're starting at 6.
Starting at 6 p.m.
You need a motion from us to table?
No.
No.
And then case 2023-17 MA, we're working through some items on that. Mr. Greg Fusera with the applicant is here tonight if he had anything to say, but that was a case where just working through some of the details on.
Okay. So both of those cases we mentioned will, at a minimum, be tabled until the January 8th, 2024 meeting. Anything else from the trustees?
Nothing at this time.
Okay. Date of our next meeting is Monday, January the 8th, 2024 at 6:00 p.m. If having nothing further on the agenda, ask for a motion to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
So moved, seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
6:20 p.m.
You thought we